It started like an ordinary afternoon in our neighborhood. My wife and I were taking a peaceful walk with our dog. We had lived around here long enough to know most of our neighbors. We never expected a simple walk to turn into a police call. We noticed the HOA president watching us from across the street. At first, I thought she was simply curious. Then she stepped closer and started staring at our dog. I could tell she was looking for a reason to complain. Patricia suddenly accused us of violating an HOA rule. She claimed our dog wasn't supposed to be on that section of sidewalk. I calmly asked her which rule she was referring to. Instead of answering, she became even more upset. I told Patricia we were simply walking through the neighborhood. There was no private yard, driveway, or restricted area involved. She insisted that HOA rules gave her the authority to stop us. I politely told her that wasn't how property rules worked. Patricia pulled out her phone and started making a call. She kept looking at us while describing what was happening. I asked her who she was calling. She simply said, "Someone who can deal with trespassers." A few minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled onto the street. Patricia immediately pointed toward us. She told the officers that we were trespassing in the neighborhood. My wife and I just stood there and waited for the officers to ask questions. The officers approached us professionally and asked what had happened. I explained that we were residents taking a walk. Patricia immediately interrupted and repeated her trespassing claim. The officers then asked me for my name. I gave the officer my full name. He paused for a moment and looked at me carefully. Then he asked one more question to make sure he had heard correctly. "Are you Marcus Johnson?" The officer's expression changed immediately. He looked at his partner and then back at me. Patricia noticed a reaction and suddenly became quiet. She had no idea why the officers seemed to recognize me. Then one of the officers finally said the words Patricia never expected to hear. "Mr. Mayor, we apologize for confusion." Patricia froze where she stood. She had called the police on the man who led the town. Patricia's entire attitude changed in seconds. The officers explained that they knew exactly who I was. She had reported me as a trespasser without even checking the facts. Now everyone on the sidewalk was watching her reaction. I told the officers exactly what had happened from the beginning. I explained that Patricia had confronted us during our walk. I also explained that she had claimed the HOA could control where we walked. The officers listened carefully without interrupting. Patricia tried to explain that she was only protecting the neighborhood, but the officers asked her a simple question. What specific property were they trespassing on? She suddenly didn't have a clear answer. The officer explained that simply walking along the neighborhood sidewalk wasn't trespassing. Patricia's HOA authority didn't override public access rules. She had mistaken her personal expectations for actual legal authority. The officers made that distinction very clear. A few neighbors began coming outside to see what was happening. Some of them had never realized who I was. I didn't use my position to intimidate anyone. I simply wanted the misunderstanding resolved peacefully. The officers apologized for the unnecessary interruption. I told them there was no need for an apology. They had responded to a report and handled it professionally. The real problem had been the assumption behind the report. Patricia finally walked over and apologized. She admitted she had made assumptions without knowing who I was. I told her that knowing my title shouldn't have changed how she treated us. Everyone in the neighborhood deserved the same respect. After everything was cleared up, we continued our walk. The police officers returned to their vehicles and prepared to leave. Patricia stayed behind, clearly thinking about what had happened. For us, the whole incident was finally over. As the sun started going down, the neighborhood became quiet again. My wife and I laughed about how quickly the situation had changed. But the lesson was more serious than the story itself. Respect should never depend on someone's title. That day, Patricia learned that an HOA title doesn't make someone above the law. The officers learned they were speaking to the town's mayor. And I learned once again that staying calm can speak louder than an argument.